Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
For the first time ever, the U.S. government told a leading AI company to shut off a model it had already shipped, and Friday night, Anthropic did exactly that. A China-based crime ring used artificial intelligence to blast out 2.5 million scam texts in 2 weeks, part of an operation that could cost people nearly $2 billion. And a Russian military intelligence unit is hiding inside cheap routers sitting in small offices and home offices all over the United States. Welcome to Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. I'm Bryan Hornung, joined as always by Randy, Bryan, and Reginald Andre. What's up, guys? How are you today?
How's it going?
Doing well. Hot here in Miami, 92 degrees.
Nice. So today we got those 3 stories. What are you saying? What are you saying?
What's that?
Were you saying something?
I said it's nice and cool here in Texas.
Oh, yeah. Same here. So here in Philly. So today we've got all 3 stories that all circle the same idea from different directions. Who actually controls the technology your business runs on? I'm going to open up the show with the big story, Anthropic getting a phone call from Washington that took its 2 newest AI models offline overnight. And Randy's going to walk us through a massive AI-powered scam operation that the FBI just disrupted, 1 million fake website addresses and counting. And Andre closes out with the Russian intelligence group quietly living inside everyday routers. So let's get into it, starting with what happens to Anthropic this weekend, guys, as they suspend Fable 5 and Mythos 5 after a government directive. And this is something really that's never happened before. You know, it says in the AI era, but even in the internet era, I mean, there rarely was a time where the government has stepped in and told a company to shut it down or whatever they had online to shut it down. Usually that's kind of stuff for the dark web. But last Friday, on June 12th, Anthropic, the company behind Claude, one of the AI tools a lot of your businesses are already using and getting used to, got a letter from the Commerce Department. And by the end of the night, they pulled its 2 newest, most powerful models, known as Fable 5 and Mythos 5. They're completely offline. If you sign on to Claude today, there's a little note there that says it's gone, and you can click a link to learn more. And not because of a hack, not because something broke, because the federal government told them to do so, or so that's the story, and we'll get into that and kind of some of the rumors that are out there and maybe conspiracy theories if you want to go there. But I want to walk you through what happened, because the lesson here isn't really about Anthropic. It's about how much control you actually have over these tools and the tools that your company depends on. So the one thing that we need to understand first is that nobody broke into Anthropic. They rolled out an update. Everybody was pretty excited about it, at least the people who are like on the cutting edge of AI. It was all over YouTube channels and things like that. But on Friday, right around 5:20 in the evening, the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick sent a letter straight to the Anthropic CEO. And it was an export control directive, guys, a national security order telling them to cut off access to those 2 models. And they came down that same night. And when we talk about your risk around technology, we almost always picture a hacker. But on the show lately, we've been talking about that third-party risk. And here we are again, a reminder that a government order can pull the plug just that fast on what your business is doing. And guys, I know a lot of people, and I don't know if you do, that turned on these models right away, started building and Claude code with these models. And now they're kind of stuck because the models have to fall back on the older models, and they're just not as powerful. So, any experience around that? What I'm talking about there, guys? Did you play
Yes.
around with it before Friday, and what's
Yes.
your experience there?
Yeah, I was definitely talking to one of our developers last week about how phenomenal Fable was, and what a light speed or whatever jump above the last version, and really in the area of doing super complex tasks and kind of staying on on task. And we all know that's AI has kind of been over the last year or so. You get too complex. I'm not talking about one, like a million records pulling out one thing, but I'm talking about this multi-layer doing this and that. A lot of times it starts pooping the bed. And he said there was a huge difference in 4.8 going over to Fable in that respect, that it could do a lot of stuff without a lot of interaction, from a human. So definitely some people are going to miss it for sure, Brian.
Gotcha. Andre, any insight or?
Yeah, I'm going to take the regulation route, because what type of regulation is this that they're just sending up? I mean, that's their form of regulation, in the sense that they sent a letter and say, you can't do this. But for years on the cybersecurity side, and now on the AI side, we've talked about, well, where is the government in all of this? Is the government just going to allow a free-for-all, or is it just when they get a phone call supposedly from somebody and say, hey, this is way too powerful for the regular consumer to use, you need to shut it down? So I think the government now, this is kind of maybe a wake-up call for them, that I'm not necessarily pro-regulation, but just like how you have, for example, there's gun regulations and that type of stuff, you may need to put something up with these companies to say, this is what you're allowed to do, this is what you can't do, or something like that. But their form of regulation of sending a letter on a Friday afternoon is not necessarily what I would want to see. I think the companies need some type of clear direction, and in that way they can follow that framework, and then they're not stuck in the situation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, get used to it, because both of these companies, Anthropic and ChatGPT, want to go public, and you're going to get regulation when you go public, right? It goes with it. So, you kind of get what you asked for here, right? These guys, I guarantee you, Andre, if they weren't trying to go public soon, they wouldn't have listened to this, and they would have released it. So that's my opinion. I've seen this. That's one pattern I've seen with companies throughout history, is when they're getting ready to go to IPO and they get some kind of government intervention saying, no, you better do this or do that, or you're not going to be allowed to go public, or you're not going to be allowed to merge. We see that a lot too, with public companies trying to merge, and the government steps in, and then they negotiate it out. I just hate when I start to see things like that happen with our government when they step in. And I guess I would feel a little bit better if we got a little bit better of an explanation from our federal government as to what the context of the concern was. Our trust in our government is at a super low point right now. And when you start seeing meddling, especially with a guy named Howard Lutnick, going on in our government with what private companies are doing, it raises a lot of red flags. It raises a lot of questions, and businesses need to take heed that we're in the wild, wild west when it comes to AI. And if you start putting these things in your business and depending on them and using them, guys, I know there's people out there starting businesses to go into legacy businesses and modernize them with AI, right? And they start going in and doing that to a business. Like, we're going to implement AI in your business. We're going to do this, right? And then they make the decision to switch to that model. And then this happens. Man, this feels like a hack to me. You know what I mean? Like, from that standpoint, if you're in IT, like, you can't just go back. right? You can't just go back to the other model if you're doing this the right way, right? There's a right way and a wrong way to use technology. And if you're doing things where you're just winging it, you're not documenting what you're doing, you're not making sure it's secure, you're going to get hacked anyway one day, right? But when a model gets taken down like this, it's a big problem, right? It would be equivalent to, let's say, Windows rolls out Windows 11 and the government steps in and says, get that off the market.
Right.
Go back to Windows 10. It's the same thing.
I have a few things I want to add, because you're right on there, Bryan.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I would say, one, this has nothing to do with hacking, what I'm fixing to say, but when you're using AI, tell the AI you want it to be deterministic. And what that means is it's going to write code that doesn't need AI. You want to write code that doesn't need AI as much as possible, because you're so right, Bryan. I can see if a company's building out AI for another company. So if you're doing like a use case, proof that you can do it, okay, then you're maybe relying on an AI. But as you go to production, you need to have that AI write code that's deterministic. And then you need to have the AI write documentation with the code so another AI can pick it up. For example, I had a problem that Grok couldn't solve. I solved it in Claude, and then I had Claude write documentation telling Grok how to do it, and it worked. So I would say deterministic. A couple other things. Supposedly, word on the street is that some Chinese actors had basically jailbroken Fable. And what that means was they get past the guardrails. I was going to also say the CEO of Claude, of Anthropic, he's the best salesman on the planet. Do you know how much this makes people want his products? They're so good. We have to shut them down. We can only give them to a few people because it'll blow everything up. I mean, what a salesman. Also, the directive from the government wasn't to just shut it down. It was to block foreign nationals, even if they were Anthropic employees and even if they were in the United States. And there's not really a way for them to do that yet. So, and then the other thing that's kind of bothers me about y'all, and this is also not about breaching, but Microsoft Office, Windows, iPhone, Apple, ChatGPT, like what do all those have in common? They're all American products, and they're great products, and people are using them all over the world. And one of the things I hate about this is it doesn't let other people use them, because when other people use this stuff, there's a stack behind it, and all of it benefits America. I'm just saying, from an economic standpoint. So I really hate it when we have to turn things off to the rest of the world, because right now the word on the street is American stuff is really good, and other is not so good often. And when you shut this down, you force others to catch up, or they go to other products or whatever. And then the American economy, I think, doesn't benefit. So anyway, those are my 5 thoughts right there, guys.
So if you're watching us live right now, you can join us in the comments, and we can answer questions if you have them, or if you just have a comment, we can talk about it here on the live stream. And one of the things I want people to understand about this situation is the directive is really just, hey, you can't give this to foreign nationals. That was really what our government came in and said. But Anthropic, our government, full well knows that they can't determine who has access to their tool, who's sitting on the other side of the screen. When they got the directive from the government, they were like, we have foreign nationals that work at our company that have access to these models. So like we would be guilty and other companies would be guilty. And how would we know who really has access, right? Because if my company buys Anthropic, right, that just shows my company. They have no idea who I've given accounts to and where they are in the world. They have no ability to track that. So that's just clarification. That should also concern people, because I smell like, hey, they're going to want to know who's accessing this model down to, call it a digital ID, call it what you want. But for some reason, I got a feeling that they're going to want to know the people who are accessing this stuff and how they're accessing it and what they're using it for. My personal opinion. But this, the government didn't act because a foreign adversary got caught doing something, as Randy kind of alluded to. Fortune magazine, that the White House push to act was a warning from Amazon, who said that their developers jailbroke the model, meaning they tricked it into bypassing its own safety guardrails. And Anthropic says it reviewed that demonstration and it only surfaced a few minor, already known weaknesses. So essentially, Anthropic is starting to kind of say and feel like a rival's demo helped take the product off the market. That is very interesting to me, especially if you understand kind of who is kind of picked to be the winner of AI in the long run by certain people in the administration. Follow the money is all I'll say there.
Yeah, and there's actually been, if you guys remember, a couple of months ago where the Department of War and Anthropic, they weren't getting along, and then they canceled would-be contract, and then they gave the contract to ChatGPT or OpenAI. But I think this is going to be where maybe the government is going to have to treat AI like how it treats, defense, like how U.S. companies just can't sell guns to other countries. They have to get approval, licensing. So it may be something that they have to do is like, okay, if you're going to sell this to another country, you got to give us we have to give you the okay.
Yeah. And the reason I chuckled, imagine the marketing coming out of this. We've got a product so good, Washington had to shut it down. I mean, it's just making people more Claude crazy, man. They want to move to Claude.
The other thing is that, number one, we've been jailbreaking AI since it's come out. So no other model has been shut down because it was jailbroken. That proves your point, Randy. Like those other models must have been so horrible that no harm, no foul. But this one's so damn good. Anthropic isn't saying that. Anthropic's like, we feel like we're being picked on a little bit here, if you kind of read between the lines, in my opinion. So, they're making the argument that, if the standard is the model can be jailbroken, that becomes the bar for pulling it, then, you're going to have to pull every AI tool as soon as somebody jailbreaks it. That's the only fair way to do it. Right. So I just want to kind of circle this back, right? Because we got into the politics and the conspiracy theory. That's the sexy part of this, right? But let's talk about what matters for your business as I wrap up this segment here. If your business has these wired critical processes tied to these tools, customer support, document reviews, code, right? Single A model, single vendor. Randy's giving you some practical tips on how you can kind of move from one model to the other and maybe not lose that, right? So these are really good ideas, really good things that you should talk to experts about who are actually using these tools and working with this stuff, because what you've taken on when you pick one tool is called a concentration risk. And in IT, we look at that as a single point of failure. And you don't want to have that in your business. This is third-party risk. If they go down and your business is dependent on a Claude model to run its AI things, its AI agents, that's like your workers not showing up for the day. That's literally where your business would be at. So think about that and start planning for it, right? So a government order shut down your business. We saw that before with COVID, right? Now we're going to have all these AI agents, right? And look how quickly you can shut them down. So serious security disclosure, a vendor dispute, a government not liking what a company's doing because they're not following what they want them to do, following their rules. These are all things that are real right now. Anthropic is not a favorite of this government, right? So take that for what it's worth, but plan around this kind of stuff. Know that it can happen, and know that if you're going hard in AI right now, or you're even going in a little bit, you need to have that fallback that you've actually tested. Randy, as you can tell by the way he talks, he's tested it. He's like, hey, I did this over here, took it over to Grok. It was crap. I did this over here, went back to Grok, and it worked. So he actually, worked through it. And those are the things that you're going to have to do. And that's why AI experts inside of businesses who are actually doing this stuff are going to be a lot better than, say, some college kid who kind of played around with it and never did this stuff, in real time. And that's how I see it playing out. So any last thoughts here, guys, before we move on?
I do have just a little bit, Brian, because why are they banning foreign nationals if it's people at Amazon that figured it out? So I did a little bit of Andre-esque research over on the side while you were talking. And apparently there's a report out that some Chinese actors were able to jailbreak Mythos, which is like their ultra super powerful version of Fable. And then that's what caused the panic at the White House. Don't know if that's true or not, but it kind of makes the pieces kind of come together a little bit. Like if it was just somebody jailbreaking Fable, which is the slightly lesser version, why would they ban foreign nationals? Because there's bad guys in every country. That the bad guys don't know a boundary, borders or whatever. You know what I mean? So anyway, just something to think about.
All right, Randy, appreciate it. So we're going to move on to your topic, which is a wild one, in my opinion, just on the numbers alone. But the FBI, working with Google and other major carriers, just disrupted a Chinese-based operation called Outsider Enterprise. And what this is basically a crime as a service business that used AI to flood people with scam texts impersonating brands that they trust. So we're talking about more than 1 million fraudulent web addresses and an estimated 1.9 billion in losses. Randy, take us through what's going on here. Give us the details.
Yeah, I mean, y'all, this is really the kind of stuff we talk about as being possible with AI. We mention it all the time. We've seen other things come to the surface that were AI involved. But what we're talking about here, like you said, it is a criminal organization that has over 1 million URLs and about 9,000 different websites. And they were using, from what we can tell and what I'm reading between the lines, using AI to pull information about you, like, in general, I'm talking about people in general, pull information about you, put it all together, and then send you a gloriously crafted smishing, which is a text that tries to get you to open up a link. So I'm talking about, they use your name. They don't have misspellings. Like we joke, probably we all joked all the time, but it's probably as recent as a year ago, we joked on the show, if the bad guys ever learn how to spell, or ever learn English idioms, like American idioms, we're going to be in trouble, because they say things that automatically tip us off. Well, this group was using AI to do these targeted smishing campaigns, if you will, that brought in your name, brought in things about you, brought in other things that have been leaked on the dark web. And all of us have stuff. Pretty much everybody that's got T-Mobile, you're out there on the dark web. Everybody's got AT&T, Verizon. I mean, that's like, what is that? Like 80%, 90% of all Americans. It's on the dark web, guys. And so anyway, that's what they did. Google was able to kind of detect it. They worked with another third-party group, and then they worked with the FBI, And the FBI basically went in and shut down the 9,000 websites. They all have the little FBI has shut this down now warning. But bottom line is this is a cat and mouse game. And it's not like they're going to go away. They're just going to put their head up somewhere else. And then one last thing to add. These guys, the bad guys, they sold their service as you said, crime as a service or phishing as a service or whatever you want to call it. But they sold it as a service, $88 a month. And you could pop in your numbers that you wanted to go and try to hack. $88 a month was what they charged. And out of that, people generated $1.9 billion in crime. So that's basically the gist of it.
That's not bad. Is that a 1-year contract or is that month to month?
I think they put you on a 3-year and they got bought by a large IT group that we like to talk about.
So what I found interesting about this is right now, we're still teaching our clients, be careful on the suspicious emails, right? We're sending out the fake phishing emails and stuff like that. And I know this may become annoying, but we're not sending, criminals, they moved on to text messages, as you're saying, WhatsApp, QR codes on the cell phone, but we MSPs are not doing that to our customers. And I know that may be a little like touchy subject because it's usually people's personal cell phones that businesses have. They don't necessarily pay for their employees' cell phones, but do we have to also do that just to kind of, keep up with the cyber criminals and start sending phishing or smishing messages to, these personal cell phones?
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty funny. We had I won't go into it, it was a government entity that we were proposing our services to. And we ended up, they were all the people on a board were all on their personal email addresses, and we couldn't get them to click because their personal email addresses, they're not going to know that our fish test is a fish test, so they're going to block it. So we just set up a schmish test, if you will, and said, hey, bring a ham to the meeting tomorrow night or something like that. And every single one of them clicked on it. So you're right. People aren't looking for that. They're not ready for that. And it just took for us just a little bit of saying, hey, this is so-and-so, bring something to the yada, yada. And all that stuff's available on the dark web. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's not a guy in a basement. It's obviously a well-structured crime organization. One team builds a phishing kit. One team buys the victim list off the dark web. One team runs the text-based blasting hardware. One team launders the money. So when crime is that organized, small businesses on the other end don't have a fighting chance because their businesses aren't that organized. So, this is why you need a plan, because you basically have very experienced, well-trained organizations coming after your bank account, coming after your money, and they don't care who you are. Like, I've talked to so many businesses lately, guys, that think like we're so small, they're not going to mess with us. And that is, I wish that were the case, but it's never been true. And I think it's even worse today because of how well organized these guys are. There's not a lot of expenses. So they're willing to mess with the smaller guys because, if they can make 20 grand or 200 grand or 2 million, it doesn't matter to them. It's money. So
it's
any
crazy.
last thought, right, Andre, before we head over to you?
And 20 grand in these other countries is our, super a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, some people might start to think like some of these groups are only messing with the big companies because they want the big payday. And that's just not the case, right? As you see when we talk about shiny hunters all the time, they hit companies big and small. They don't care. They just get into the Salesforce, they get into the cloud database, and they go from there. So, all right, Andre, this one's yours. So, so far today, we've talked about how the threat has been loud, right? The government ordered that the government order that made headlines and $1 billion scam ring. Now, Reginald Andre, your story is the opposite. It's quiet. It's the Russian military. These guys have been around forever. I feel like I've been talking about them for 15 years now. It's crazy. And this intelligent unit that isn't kicking down your front door. This is a group that lives inside of networks, inside of devices. Now they've been kind of found out that they're living inside of that little router in your closet, and you'd never even know it. So what's going on here, Andre? Fill us in.
Yes, so we have security researchers. They have discovered that Fancy Bear has been compromising certain routers. So what we've seen in our industry, and probably in the last 10 years, is that before, back in the days, you would have SonicWall routers, maybe Cisco Meraki routers, and these companies charge large license fees every year for their service. So companies like Ubiquiti and Microtech, they've come out and they've basically said, hey, buy us once, and maybe there's going to be we'll do the updates for the next 6-7 years or whatever the case is, but you don't have to pay these quote unquote expensive license fees. Nevertheless, IT providers have started using Ubiquiti and Microtech routers a lot, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it's more set it and forget it. They're not doing the updates. And what the cyber criminals are now doing is they're actually using these routers, which think of it as a computer, and they're using the routers as the devices for their servers. So a good analogy is a criminal stealing someone's car before committing a crime. So they stole your car, they're using your car to do a crime, and then now when the police are now looking for the bad guy, they trace your car, but then you realize, like, no, this wasn't me. That was because my car was stolen. So it's the same concept where you now have the cyber criminals. They're using these routers that are not patched. They may not have. They may have the default, UBNT and what I think is UBNT username and password. The default username and passwords. There's no ongoing monitoring, and now these researchers are finding that these legit companies that have these firewalls in place in their businesses, their routers are compromised, and they're in the shadows, because there's one thing if an IP address is from Russia, but if the IP address is from a local company in Miami, it's not going to ring as much alarms. And what's even more important on this is the bad guys are changing what is called the DNS records. So if you, an employee in the company, goes to Microsoft.com to do a login to your Microsoft 365 or your Google Workspace, it's redirecting it to a different website. So they're able to do this within, and they don't even have to send out a phishing email to try to get them to do that. So point of the story here is update your routers. It's not set it and forget it.
Well, and also to add on to that, they're targeting lesser known or more home style routers like Microtech and TP-Link. And then, once they get in there, they're just resetting the DNS. And what the DNS is, it's for the listeners, it's basically a service that the computer calls up and says, hey, I want to go to Microsoft.com. What is the IP address or the unique identifier on the internet of that address? And then the DNS server gives back that address. So then the router, the TP-Link or whatever knows where to send the traffic. So they send back basically their own servers. You log in there, you do your multi-factor there. They take that session token. Once again, 2026, we're still talking about this. We should have nailed this in 2025 and stopped it in its tracks, but it's the same thing. They're taking that session token, they're logged in. And, if they do millions of home routers, they're going to get millions of everyday blokes like you and me, but eventually they're going to get some CEOs of Anthropic or some CEOs or some larger organizations or government officials, Cash Patel's home router or whatever. Like, they cast a wide enough net, they're going to get those logins and session tokens for all kinds of important, I mean, quote unquote, important to them people. You know what I mean? Important to them as a government. And that's the reality behind it. And one last little thing, they can also use that for psyops. If we broke out into a hot war, hot wars doesn't mean there's fighting going on everywhere. Most people are just doing their life back home. And even in Ukraine, it's not everywhere that's fighting all the time. But if there's a hot war, they can use stuff like all these logins to make people not have the will to keep fighting a hot war and make it so annoying and so disruptive to our economy that we've got to quit fighting the hot war. So there's a lot of strategy behind this as well.
So the fix is basic. Firmware updates and killing default passwords in these devices will prevent this Russian Fancy Bear group, or is it Fancy Bear, right? Mm-hmm. From getting into these devices and siphoning off these session tokens and whatever else they can get their hands on. They can also use these devices for counterattacks for other hacks, like using them for DDoS attacks and for other purposes, like using your IP address on your router to do their dirty work somewhere else. Meaning when the feds or the police or whoever look into the crime, they see an IP address, it might be yours because they were able to either go through your router as part of a VPN operation they set up or some other way. So the fix is basic. It's simple, and we need to be aware of these things, especially in a work from home or hybrid environment, right? Because if you're doing work stuff on one of these little routers that these guys are in, you could be compromising your own business, your workplace, your email. They can get in there and they can do a lot with that. So heed the warning and make sure you're paying attention to this stuff and reach out to somebody who can help you or point you in the right direction of somebody who can. This is really important, especially for CEOs, business owners, wealthy individuals who are running technology. Make sure that you're aware that this problem exists and you need to get these routers, number one, out of your environment if you can, and number two, somebody needs to look after them. You can't just plug them in, turn them on, walk away from them, and hey, they work, so don't need to worry about them after that. So all right, guys, let's bring this sucker home. Any other thoughts before we move on today? And I just got rid of Randy. I had to get rid of the image. Instead, I got rid of Randy. My bad. It'll be all right, Randy.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So I don't know why this is not switching, but there we go. All right, guys, let's wrap this show up today. Appreciate you hopping on with me and talking through these 3 stories that we covered. We talked about Anthropic, the most powerful AI, and them getting switched off by a government order. A criminal operation used AI to scam people out of nearly $2 billion, and a Russian intelligence unit is hiding inside routers small businesses rely on every day. And on the surface, they're all about 3 different things: regulation, fraud, and espionage. But underneath, they're really the same story. The technology that your business runs on is controlled, targeted, and exploited by people who are not in the room with you. The AI you adopt, the brand you trust, the hardware in your closet, every one of them is a dependency. And every dependency is something someone else can reach or take advantage of. The owners who do well from here aren't the ones with the most tools. They're the ones who know exactly what they depend on, and they have a plan for the day when it's taken away. So remember, one thing I want you to leave today's show with is every tool that you depend on is a switch someone else can flip. And that's our show. If today was useful, please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching right now. It's the single biggest thing you can do to help us reach more business owners. Leave a review while you're there. We read them. Huge thanks to my partners, Randy and Andre, for breaking down these stories with me today. And the three of us will see you all next week. Stay safe, stay sharp, and take care.
Take care.